everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk Physical Media. I'm your host, John, and this week was a pretty slow news week in the world of physical media, so it's going to be a very Q&A heavy show this week, and I'm actually going to do 4 top 10 lists at the end of the show after we get through the news this week. Even though it wasn't that much news, what we did get announced was pretty damn exciting, and that is that A Nightmare on Elm Street is going to be coming to 4K Blu-ray. Now, this has been rumored for a very long time, and honestly, it's well-deserved and well-needed. The previous releases aren't that bad, but I have it in the box set that's really not that well done, and honestly, other than A Nightmare on Elm Street, the rest of the sequels are all doubled up on discs, and they're still good scans, but imagine those movies on 4K Blu-ray. Now, right now, all we know is that A Nightmare on Elm Street is going to be coming to 4K steelbook, and that the sequels, from what I understand, are being worked on, but they are not coming to 4K Blu-ray yet. Now, I really want to get A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors on 4K Blu-ray. I think that would be awesome as well. You know, the other ones, you might as well just drag them along with the original and 3, but I'll take them as well. And you know what? It's a Warner Brothers release, so we can expect HDR10 and hopefully a brand new audio track, which is something I wanted to talk to you guys about this week, because I have noticed recently that a lot more studios, especially the major studios, not as much the boutique labels, are releasing their movies with previously released audio tracks, previously released with their Blu-rays. They're not upgrading them anymore, and I'm not too sure why. I feel like it's a cost-cutting measure. There's just been a lot of stuff in the news about studios trying to save money, how they're not really doing too well. Actually in the video game world this week, I don't know if you guys saw, but Microsoft closed a couple of game studios, and it's really sad because Microsoft acquired these game studios, and then now you shut them down. So you took them in, and they expected, now we're going to be flush with cash. We can, do our vision. And unfortunately now a lot of people are out of a job, and that for me is really sad to hear. I hate hearing people lose their jobs and lose their way of living. We read it as a news article, but think about it. People got laid off from their jobs. They lose their medical insurance, their way of living. They have to go out and look for a new job now. And I just hate hearing things like that because it's always a corporate decision. The people higher up, like, you're trying to save money, and that's how they always pitch it. We're trying to save money whichever way we can. They always throw in that line that, we're reshuffling things, we're moving money around. Okay, but you still cost people their jobs while your CEOs, vice presidents, and whatever, we see this with Warner Brothers all the time. David Zaslav, he doesn't release movies, he gets tax breaks, and, that's what his job is for the shareholders and the owners and everything like that, is to save money. That's why he gets paid so well. But they give this guy a raise while laying off other people and trying to cut corners every which way they can, which, circling back to what I was saying, I feel like these studios, especially the major studios like Paramount and Warner Brothers, I've noticed lately, reusing the same audio tracks, cutting out the second Blu-ray disc, just giving us the 4K disc. Packaging has felt a little bit cheaper, except for the steelbooks. They have definitely been investing in the steelbooks lately, and the exclusive steelbooks, which I really do appreciate. But, really what we're getting now is just visual upgrades while they're still charging the same price. So it's like not as noticeable to us in the sense that they might just charge $25 for a new catalog title, like an example, The Departed or Paramount's release of The Crow. They're all in about that $22 to $25 range, and they always come with just one disc. Now they're putting all the extras on that one disc. We're not getting a lot of new extras, and we're not getting audio upgrades, so all we're really getting are visual upgrades while they're still selling us on this big upgrade or an anniversary edition. Really, we're just getting visual upgrades and upgrades to the packaging, and they're not giving us these new audio tracks. Like the last time I remember getting a brand new Atmos track, and Rogue One 677 reminded me of this, was for The Abyss, True Lies, and Aliens. I believe those ones I can't remember if they got new audio tracks. I know that The Abyss definitely got a new Dolby Atmos track, but that's really sad. That's been that long since we have gotten any new films, or at least that I have reviewed, with new audio tracks. I mean, the boutique labels are doing it a little bit more, giving us new audio tracks. The major studios, they're definitely recycling old audio tracks. Some of them are good, but some of them are pretty bad, especially Paramount reusing Dolby True HD 5.1 audio tracks, which are pretty old at this point, and some, I'll give it to them. Like Primal Fear, that was a pretty good one, but Mean Girls, that really needed an upgrade, and it's really disappointing that they just seem to be going the cheap route, trying to save money any which way they can, and of course, it's always at the expense of either the consumer or the low-ranking employees. It's never at the top. You never touch the guys who are making the most money at these companies, despite the fact they'd rather hurt everybody else, all the hard-working people on this planet. They'd rather hurt them, give them less while charging the same, or even give them less and charge more. We're seeing that all over the place. I'm only talking about stuff in the entertainment business. I'm not going to get into what else is going on in this world, but it is just very frustrating for us. We're buying all these 4K Blu-rays, and I've just noticed lately that we're not getting too many audio upgrades, and I don't know, it just kind of bothers me a little bit that they're still charging the same amount while putting in less effort. Now, it's not everybody. The Criterion Collection I still think is doing a great job. And again, these are all the boutique labels. Shout and Scream Factory doing a phenomenal job. Their release of Killer Clowns from Outer Space is outstanding. Vinegar Syndrome always does a good job, despite the fact I don't always love every movie they release, but the packaging and the transfer always gets great attention, and I absolutely love that. Kino Lorber keeping classic films alive. Arrow Video, always one of the best. Then you got, the other labels like Turbine Studios, they do a great job as well. 88 Films. There's so many great studios that put so much effort into these 4K Blu-rays. Now, I'm not saying all the people who work on the 4K transfers are doing a bad job or, being lazy. It's definitely people on the higher end trying to save money any which way they can. And, it just gets very concerning because 4K Blu-rays are not cheap and you want to see them put in as much effort as they can. So, at the end of the day, we're back to Freddy Krueger. We're back to A Nightmare on Elm Street. What do I want to see? I'm hoping that besides the big visual upgrade, which we're all hoping for, actually, I gotta be honest, A Nightmare on Elm Street, I believe it had a 7.1 on it, so it actually does have a really good audio track. So if they were to reuse that, it's probably not that bad, but I still would like a Dolby Atmos track or just an upgrade to the audio. I think this kind of movie deserves it. Unfortunately, what do I expect to happen? The same thing I keep seeing happen. I'm pretty sure they're going to reuse the same audio track. They just announced actually that Purple Rain is not going to get a brand new Dolby Atmos track as well. And if any movie needed a new Dolby Atmos track, you would think it would be Purple Rain. So pretty sure that we'll just end up reusing the same audio. And sometime down the line, we will probably get the sequels to A Nightmare on Elm Street on 4K Blu-ray as well. And then we'll probably get a complete collection, or at least I hope so. Fingers crossed on that. You can keep the reboot out of it. I don't need that anywhere near any kind of A Nightmare on Elm Street collection. And it's also been almost confirmed that the Lethal Weapon 4K Blu-rays are being worked on. That's a Warner Brothers release as well. And again, I want all 4 of those movies on 4K Blu-ray. Lethal Weapon's the best in that franchise, but 2 is right on its tail, and I also still really enjoy 3 and 4. Actually, 4 is a little bit better than 3, so I really enjoy the entire franchise. All 4 films directed by Richard Donner, so I absolutely cannot wait for those movies to come to 4K Blu-ray. That is great news as well. And then the only other little bit of news is that Saw X is going to be getting a Lionsgate 4K Steelbook transfer, which means it looks like it's going to be a great 4K Steelbook. So if you've been holding out on getting Saw X on 4K Blu-ray, maybe you'll get it in this beautiful 4K Steelbook. I actually haven't picked up Saw X on 4K Blu-ray yet, so maybe I will grab that. And just in time for spooky season in October. We're getting a little bit closer. We're in summer blockbuster season right now, but right around the corner is spooky season, so you gotta always be prepared for that. But that was really it for news, so now we're just gonna dive right into the Q&A portion of this week's show. And the first question this week is actually a Star Wars question from Nick Chang, and he wrote, "What's your ranking for all 9 Star Wars flicks, plus Rogue One and Solo? And what are your thoughts on the original trilogy in 4K? I recently rewatched my Rogue One 2D Blu-ray, included in my 3D Steelcase edition, and it still looks great. With a consistent bitrate, it's also my 4th favorite behind the original trilogy as the most warlike Star Wars flick." Yeah, I actually agree with your analysis of Rogue One. It is a great Star Wars movie, and it's probably one of the best to come out in this brand new, the Disney Star Wars movies, we'll call them, which includes this new trilogy, Solo, and Rogue One, which, we started out really good with The Force Awakens and Rogue One. We really thought we were going to get spoiled with the Star Wars movies, and then, it fell apart. So, what do I think of it? I actually think that A New Hope is the best of the original trilogy on 4K Blu-ray, and that's because that one was actually done by 20th Century Fox before Disney acquired them. So The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi were actually done by Disney. So that's why there's an inconsistency there. 20th Century Fox did A New Hope, and I do think that is the best of the 4K Blu-rays. I actually don't think any of the Star Wars movies are perfect on 4K Blu-ray, which is really unfortunate. Rogue One, The Force Awakens, I would say those are probably the best on 4K Blu-ray, and I actually don't own one Star Wars movie on 4K Blu-ray, and we'll get into that right now when I give you guys my rankings, which I have been updated because I think we did this back when the channel first started, when it was still me and Matt. I think we ranked all the Star Wars movies, but, things change. Sometimes I got to rearrange some things. That was the last time I did a full watch through as well. Every once in a while, I'll just throw on my favorite ones, and I don't want to spoil it, so we'll start at the bottom. And that one is going to be the only one that I don't actually own on Blu-ray or 4K Blu-ray or at all, because I just do not want to ever see it again, and that is Rise of Skywalker. This movie is absolutely atrocious. I find it almost offensively bad. It looks good. I'm not going to take anything away from the visuals and the audio design and anything like that, but it makes no sense. They had no through line with this entire trilogy. You say what you want about the prequel trilogy, at least George Lucas had a vision for those movies. The sequel trilogy, I mean, they started out great. J.J. Abrams seemed to have a vision for his movie, but then Rian Johnson had a vision for his movie, trying to undo things that we did in The Force Awakens, and then we bring J.J. Abrams back to try and undo the things we did in The Last Jedi, and it all just becomes really incoherent, and then, man, they are just trying to do fan service after fan service, trying to bring the Emperor back. Like, that was just ridiculous. And then, of course, at the very end of the movie with Kylo Ren, oh, man, he has to have a face turn, right? So that was very, very, very frustrating, and I mean, I just did not like that movie at all. The best thing about that night was seeing the opening to Tenet in IMAX. That's the only thing I took away that was a positive from my experience with Rise of Skywalker. Haven't seen it since, no desire to see it again. And at number 10, which was my last place for a very long time, and that's Episode 2. And this is, Hayden Christensen and his hatred for sand, and Natalie Portman doing the best she could, but the dialogue is just cheesy as hell, and you guys know how I feel about bad CGI. This entire movie is bad CGI, and it's really hard to look past it. It's hard to look past the bad dialogue, and really, I don't take anything positive away from it other than, you know what, it has its moments and it serves a purpose. Like, it is a good through line if you were going from episode 1 to episode 3, but I do feel like episode 1 and 2 are not as necessary, where I feel like episode 3 is actually a good movie. And then at number 9 is Solo. This is actually one I like. This is like a 50-50 kind of one. It's got its moments. I feel like everyone is doing a decent enough job. It looks pretty good. Like, I have no complaints about the visuals with this movie. I actually thought that Donald Glover was actually really good as Lando Calrissian. Filling Billy D. Williams' shoes. I thought he did a pretty good job with that. Everybody else, not that great in their roles. And, they tried to bring something back. I'm not going to spoil this exact moment, but they tried to bring somebody back from the Phantom Menace. And, that's just trying to tie into the animated series. And I don't think that works, especially since we never addressed it again. So that made it even more frustrating. Emilia Clarke's in this movie. And, I just feel like she's never been able to become that movie star that a lot of people think she will become because she was so good as Daenerys in Game of Thrones. But you know what? Without some dragons, I guess it's just not working. So then that brings us to number 8, and that's Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Number 2 at the box office last week. Can you believe that? So there are a lot of Phantom Menace fans out there. When I was growing up, the prequels just got shit on all the time, and I didn't particularly enjoy them. I enjoyed one of them, but 1 and 2 I was never really a fan of. 1's actually kind of started to grow on me a little bit, but there's still things in episode 1 that I absolutely hate. First of all, the horrible CGI, the awful dialogue in that movie. I mean, say what you will about Jake Lloyd, the actor, he was still a kid, and he should not have been bullied at the time for his performance. If you guys don't know about that, look it up. And the kid was just a kid, man, and that was really messed up what people were doing to him, and probably still do to this day. It seems like he's gotten his life back on track, though. But either way, the movie is just it was disappointing is the most you could say about it. But again, the reason why it's at number 8 is I find new things to enjoy in this movie. It's actually one that I can revisit. I actually was trying to actually see it on the big screen. Maybe I'll appreciate it even more than I did back in, when it first came out. I was never a big Star Wars guy. It actually took me until like later in life to get really into Star Wars. Now I consider it one of my favorite franchises of all time, but back then in 1999, I wasn't a Star Wars kid, if you could believe it. I saw The Phantom Menace, and maybe this is why. Maybe I had to really go back and find the original trilogy of movies, because I still find that those are the best. Overall, the best trilogy, and one of the best trilogies of all time. And at number 7, the most divisive of any Star Wars movies, The Last Jedi. There's people who will swear up and down that this is one of the best Star Wars movies, while you'll see people swearing up and down that this is one of the worst Star Wars movies. What do I think of this movie? I think it's alright. I had plans to see this movie like 2 or 3 times in theaters because I was so into The Force Awakens that I saw 4 or 5 times in theaters. I saw it and I was one and done with it. Then I saw it on 4K Blu-ray. And, I never hated the movie, but I've also never really loved the movie. A lot of the decisions that were made just felt really stupid. I'll never get over having Mark Hamill toss the lightsaber over his shoulder. I just thought that was so stupid and unnecessary, and like almost felt purposeful to like spit in the face of the Star Wars fans. Didn't understand that, but visually, this is one of the best looking films, and I really like Rian Johnson, the director. I love what he's done with the Knives Out movies, and Looper's an all-time classic. So you know what? I feel like people were too hard on him and hard on this movie, while it's also not a great Star Wars movie at the end of the day. And at number 6, and I'd say this is the first great film in the entire franchise, well, as far as my rankings go, and that's Star Wars Episode 3. The final heel turn for Darth Vader. This is what everybody was anticipating, and this is all a lot of us wanted to see from the prequel trilogy, and thank God we have it. And this was actually a great memory for me in theaters, because I actually saw a triple feature this day. This was the first movie I saw. I saw Star Wars Episode episode 3, then I saw Madagascar, and then I saw the 2005 remake of The Longest Yard starring Adam Sandler, and that was a great day at the theaters, and I'll never forget that. And I've always enjoyed episode 3 ever since. You know, this is what we really wanted to see. Is there still bad dialogue and bad CGI? Absolutely. It wouldn't be the prequel trilogy if we didn't have that, but I still find things to enjoy in this movie, and I think this is actually a very good Star Wars movie. And that brings us to number 5, and that's where you'll find Rogue One for me. I love Rogue One. I thought this movie, you know, this is where Gareth Edwards does best, and that's create scope. We saw this last year with The Creator, and he did that on an $80 million budget, and it looks like a $200 million movie, and he did that with this movie, which I think had a way bigger budget than $80 million. I'm sure of it, actually. But again, has the Death Star ever looked bigger than it does in Rogue One? You know, we saw what this movie was going to be in the scroll, so we knew the ending of this movie. So the movie itself had to feel big, and it sure felt big as hell. Had one of the saddest endings, even though you knew it was coming because of what this movie is. It still hurt, and that just shows you that it was a well-constructed movie, and I really did like Rogue One. And honestly, it's one of the better 4Ks and one of the better Disney-made Star Wars films. And then at number 4, this might surprise some people, but that is Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. You know, this was the one that completed the original trilogy, and I feel like this movie is great overall, but I do have some problems with the Ewoks. Yes, I am one of those people. I don't understand how these little creatures can destroy people with rocks and whatever the hell else they were using. Very primitive stuff against, I mean, I get it that stormtroopers are not the strongest, but these things were still able to beat them. Like, how bad of a job are they doing on hiring people? What are they doing? I don't understand what's going on. Who hires these stormtroopers? Like, if I was Darth Vader or anybody else in the higher-ups when it comes to hiring these people, I would be embarrassed because they are terrible at their jobs. If this is this is all it takes to beat them, the stuff at Jabba's palace in the beginning of this movie is absolutely amazing. Some of the best stuff in a Star Wars movie happens in Return of the Jedi. The stuff at the end of the movie with Darth Vader and Luke and, you know, the Emperor right in between them, you know, Luke's face with light and dark on it, one of the best images, and it just tells you so much in it. I love Return of the Jedi for that, but you know what, the Ewoks is a good enough reason for any to have it at number 4, and that's why at number 3, which might surprise a lot of people and probably upset a lot of you guys, but I do love this movie, and that's The Force Awakens. I mean, the hype for this movie was so real. I remember when the trailer dropped, I was working a night job at the time. I was driving a forklift. I drove the forklift all the way up to the bathroom, ran inside, and I was just looking at my phone to watch The Force Awakens trailer. I think it premiered during like Monday Night Football or something, but I was thrilled. I could not wait to check out the trailer for this, and then that was it. I couldn't wait. Me and Faith went to the opening night for this movie. There's actually pictures of us wearing our Star Wars Christmas sweaters. That was one thing that was cool too, that Star Wars was coming to the Christmas season. It always kind of came out in May, but they were kind of trying to change it up for like Disney and everything. Eventually they tried May again, and you can't catch lightning in a bottle twice, so unfortunately that didn't work. And I really do think that when they had December lockdown, that was the best. The first 3 movies they released in a row, you know, The Force Awakens, Rogue One, and then The Last Jedi, those were all in December, and I thought they worked in that time frame. The Force Awakens, I love that movie still so much to this very day. I don't understand why people dislike it. I get it. It's a rehash of A New Hope. It's crazy, and I get it. I completely understand all the complaints, but that doesn't mean I do not love seeing Han Solo. I've also been a pretty big fan of Kylo Ren. I thought that what they set up in this movie could have led to a great trilogy of movies, but of course, like I said, they fumbled the ball, but still, everything they established in this movie, if you look at this movie in a bubble and not think about what happens after it, I think you can look at this movie and absolutely fall in love with it all over again. Try and take yourself back to 2015 when this movie came out. I was thrilled. Like I said earlier, I saw this movie, I'm pretty sure 4 or 5 times in the theaters, and I loved it each and every single time. And I still, every year around Christmas time, try and revisit The Force Awakens because it brings back those nostalgic memories of when Faith and I went and saw that movie in theaters, and all the other times I went and saw it by myself or with Matt. I just love the movie, and I think it's a very underappreciated Star Wars movie. Now, at 2 and 1, obviously you could figure it out, and it's usually at the top of most people's Star Wars list, but how do they rank them? Well, for me, it's usually the standard at this point. A New Hope at number 2, and The Empire Strikes Back at number 1. And you know, A New Hope is really creeping up on The Empire Strikes Back for me. I've really enjoyed that movie. I rewatched that one probably more than any other Star Wars movie because originally it was just Star Wars, and if you watch that one in a vacuum, it is a great movie overall, and one of the best movies that George Lucas himself ever directed, because he didn't direct the sequel. That's Ivan Kershner who directed the sequel, while George Lucas, you know, wrote, produced, and all that kind of jazz. And honestly, I think that The Empire Strikes Back is all the better for it. You know, this is the one that left us on that crazy cliffhanger. One of the biggest reveals in film history with Luke, I am your father. Like, you know, and again, we were all saying it wrong for all this time. It's no, I am your father. No, it's all great stuff in this movie, and it still holds up to this very day. It is absolutely the best Star Wars movie. That was a great question, Nick. Thank you so much. And the next question is from our buddy 021OM6, and he said, after watching your The Town review, it got me realizing how many good heist movies there are. What's your top 10 heist movies of all time? Told you we're going to have a bunch of top 10 lists this week. My favorite heist movies of all time. I'm going to start from the bottom, work myself up, and that is, of course, starting with number 10, and this is Baby Driver. This one came out in 2017. This feels like a summer blockbuster type of movie, directed by Edgar Wright, and his use of music in this movie is just fantastic. Well-constructed film. Actually, probably, it's not my favorite yet. I still think Hot Fuzz is Edgar Wright's best movie, but Baby Driver is a great movie, and he's just the driver, but either way, has some great jokes in the movie, again, great music, and it also has a great Michael Myers gag in there, so you can't really go wrong with this movie.
Mike Myers!
It should be the Halloween mask.
This is a Halloween mask!
No, the killer dude from Halloween.
Oh, you mean Jay?
At number 9, I have Dog Day Afternoon. This is much more of a sadder heist movie, and when you find out the reason why Al Pacino is actually committing this bank robbery, what I love about this movie is how big it feels and how real it feels. When Al Pacino's out in the streets, and the crowd's there watching him, and he's got all the cameras on him, it feels so realistic and so authentic, and that's something that Sidney Lumet did, I think, better than anybody. I think he really captured that real feeling of things. So if you watch 12 Angry Men or The Verdict, the way he can just capture like how people are sweating, the way they're wearing their clothes, they actually capture how a person really looks. They don't feel that cleaned up. They feel authentic. They feel like real people. The cinematography always feels like that as well. Look at his other movies like Serpico. Feels very similar in tone. Al Pacino obviously has worked with him numerous times, and I think Dog Day Afternoon is probably the best movie that they ever did together, and it is one of the best heist movies. And number 8 is Hell or High Water. This is definitely Chris Pine's best performance in my opinion, and probably Ben Foster's best role as well. He is great in this movie. Also, Jeff Bridges loves to do this like Texas drawl out of him in this movie. He's done it in a few other movies. He just feels like he has fun doing it. So he's done it a couple times, you know, this and True Grit. But at the end of the day, it's probably like a modern day Western. I actually compare this movie a lot to like No Country for Old Men. You know, it feels like a Western. It has the tone of a Western in it. And at the end of the day, it's also just a heist movie. And I love that aspect. And these people are robbing banks for good, per se. You know, this movie's operating in that gray area for sure, and I really do think that they nail it. It has a good 4K Blu-ray, not a great 4K Blu-ray. We'll talk about that one in the future, actually. And then at number 7, we got Michael Mann's Thief. You might see Michael Mann another time on this list for another movie that he did. We'll talk about that in a little while. But this is a great James Caan performance. It's also a very well shot movie. It's got a fantastic synthesizer heavy score, and it's got some great heist scenes in it at the end of the day. It's also telling the story about how James Caan's character, even if he wants to be a good person, it's too late for him. It's never gonna work out, and it's about facing the kind of person you really are while also being a great heist movie. And at number 6, maybe a lot of people don't think of this as a heist movie, but we gotta go with Inception. Christopher Nolan's follow-up to The Dark Knight. The hype around this movie was crazy. I recently reviewed the 4K Blu-ray here on the channel. But, you know, it's a heist that takes place in someone's dreams. But, you know, we're not necessarily taking something out, but we might be putting something in their dreams. And that's what it's called, to incept somebody. And I absolutely love Inception. I absolutely think this is one of Christopher Nolan's best films. It actually used to be my favorite. Kind of cooled off on it a little bit. You guys can actually look at all my reviews for Christopher Nolan's movies except for the ones that don't have 4K Blu-ray releases, so I haven't reviewed Memento or Insomnia here on the channel, or even following yet. And speaking of reviews, at number 5, I got Ocean's 11. I just watched this movie in anticipation of watching Ocean's 11, 12, and 13 on 4K Blu-ray. Started that review, watched Ocean's 11. Spoiler alert, looked good on 4K Blu-ray. We'll talk more about that in the future, but the film itself, it's always been really good. It's one of Steven Soderbergh's best films. You know, I am going to rewatch 12 and 13. I haven't seen those in years. The last time I saw 13 was actually when it came out in theaters. Haven't seen it since. So Ocean's 11, though, I watch that movie every single year. It's a fantastic heist movie. Moves along at a great pace. I mean, the cast is stacked. How many Academy Award winners are just in this movie? But it's led by Matt Damon, Brad Pitt, George Clooney. amongst so many stars. I can go on and on. Much better than the Rat Pack version that came out in the 1960s. Number 4, Reservoir Dogs. We don't even see the heist in this movie. We only see the aftermath and everything that happened leading up to the heist. The heist itself, it's only talked about amongst the guys. You know, we see them running away. We see cops get killed. And it's all so violent. And it's all so well done. It's Quentin Tarantino's first movie, and it's one of his best movies, in my opinion. It's still his second best movie behind the follow-up to this, 1994's Pulp Fiction, which should have won Best Picture. We'll talk more about that in a little while. And that brings us to number 3, Point Break, starring Keanu Reeves and Patrick Swayze. The Swayze Express, baby. I love Point Break. I've talked about this movie so many times here on the channel, and it just never gets old. And at the end of the day, the bank robbers are the ex-presidents. Bodie, Patrick Swayze leads these guys, you know, to fuel their endless summer. We also get a great Gary Busey performance in this movie. Honestly, it is his best performance. Keanu Reeves being his cheesy 90s self in here, and it all works out so perfectly. Catherine Bigelow does a great job directing this film. Came out the week after Terminator 2. If you were living in 1991 going to the theaters, you got to see Terminator 2 one week, and the next week you got to go back and see Point Break. That's awesome. And then that brings us to number 2. I talked about this movie pretty recently, and I think this is Ben Affleck's best movie, his magnum opus as far as being an actor and as far as directing, and that is The Town. This is also one of the best movies about Boston, and it's just such a well-made movie. The heist scenes, though, they feel so realistic, so authentic, very similar to my number 1 movie, which is Michael Mann's Heat. And how could it not? Audio design of the main bank heist in this movie is the best audio design ever. And all they did was just record the actual audio, something a lot of movies seem to not want to do. I don't understand that. You know, when you're firing the blanks, it's still basically firing a bullet, so it's making the same exact noise. There's just no real bullets coming out, so why not use that audio? Civil War did this pretty recently, and I think that was a great idea. I really think it helps to feel more realistic and get under your skin more. When the violence seems like it can actually happen, when it gets closer to home, it just makes for a better movie. And I think that The Town and Michael Mann's Heat both did this so well. And, you know, unfortunately, I don't think that The Town gets that close to Heat as much as I would want it to, but The Town does have a better 4K Blu-ray because Heat, unfortunately, has one of the worst 4K Blu-rays ever. And that was a great question, buddy. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And to take a quick break from the top 10 list, this one is from Blu-ray Collector 18. He says, sounds crazy for this question, but one good use of DNR in a movie. Good one. This is another topic that has been coming up a lot lately, especially since the James Cameron 4K Blu-rays. DNR, digital noise reduction. You know, we're trying to eliminate the grain, and the only way to do that is kind of wipe it clean. James Cameron's using a new DNR, an artificial intelligence DNR, which was supposed to eliminate the grain while maintaining the detail. And we saw that in varying results. Me personally, I thought The Abyss did a great job with that. I thought that Aliens tried, didn't quite work, and then True Lies, it doesn't look great, but True Lies had the benefit of never being released on Blu-ray, so at the end of the day, True Lies is the best we're going to get with that one. So, yes, The Abyss did a good job, but digital noise reduction, it's something we've talked about a lot in the past and how it's ruined so many great 4K Blu-rays. Terminator 2 is a great example of this. I haven't seen it. American Graffiti did this like crazy. And the reason is when you wipe that clean, it creates this waxy effect. You know, when you eliminate the grain, it just looks a little bit unnatural. Now, you can use a little bit of DNR, and a lot of 4K Blu-rays do this. Paramount does this a lot. So off the top of my head, I can't really think of a disc specifically where I thought, you know, the DNR is doing good work, but there are a lot of uses of DNR if you use a limited amount where it can be helpful and assisting in the restoration process, other than it being something that we rely too much on to get rid of the grain. Because at the end of the day, you need the grain. Grain is not a bad thing. It's actually a really good thing. You know, we want to try and clean it up a little bit so it doesn't look like a blizzard, but you also want to have it there. It doesn't have to be something that's completely gone from anything that was shot on film, and it shouldn't be completely gone in my opinion. You know, I don't really love the use of DNR, but it can be a helpful tool in certain areas. There's probably times that it's used and you don't even realize it. I'm sure of that, actually, that it's for all of us, that we can't actually pinpoint every use of DNR that's ever been used on every 4K Blu-ray. So for me, I can't think of one off the top of my head, but I'm sure that there have been some Paramount releases that I've talked about in the past that had some limited use of DNR. You know, I just don't want to see them being too heavy on it because, again, that's how we end up with some of the worst looking 4K Blu-rays out there. That's a great question, too. Thank you so much, buddy. I really appreciate it. And the next question is from Xbitasm, I think is how you pronounce it. He wrote, do you still follow Ryan Blaney? Well, got the Ryan Blaney hat on right here for you, buddy. And yeah, I'm a huge NASCAR fan. If you guys who don't watch NASCAR, NASCAR is a big auto sport here in the United States. If you guys are worldwide, it's something comparable to like Formula One, IndyCar, more of a worldwide kind of sports rally car. But NASCAR is stock car racing here in the United States. It's actually one of our biggest sports, not as popular as it was in the 1990s and 2000s, but I've been watching NASCAR since 2001. Always been a big fan. I was a Jeff Gordon guy growing up. When he retired, I had to find somebody to replace him as my favorite driver. That guy was Ryan Blaney because I really liked him in the 21 Wood Brothers car, and I just was looking for something. I didn't have an attachment to Chase Elliott. I like Chase Elliott a lot, actually. I really grew to like Chase Elliott. Again, people who aren't fans of NASCAR probably have no idea what I'm talking about, but Ryan Blaney was my guy when he switched from Wood Brothers to Penske, even though Wood Brothers is pretty much a Penske satellite team. He ended up in the 12 car, and, obviously since then he won the championship last year. My only ever sports championship from any of my teams, although the Knicks are doing fantastic at this very moment. You guys could be watching this video and be like, wait, not right now. But right now when I'm recording, the Knicks are leading 2-0. Let's hope that it's 3-0. All of my sports teams, the Jets, the Mets, the Knicks, they've never won anything in my lifetime. The Mets have gone to a couple of World Series. The Jets have gone to a few AFC Championship games. But I'm sure when you guys are listening to this and watching this, you're like, well, all those teams suck. And they do suck. And they've caused me a lot of heartbreak in my life. But Ryan Blaney, surprisingly, won me my only championship as a fan. Now, Jeff Gordon won a NASCAR championship in 2001, the first year I started watching NASCAR full-time. But I don't really count that because that was the first year, and it feels a little bit unfair. But I would say my fandom paid off when it comes to Ryan Blaney, and I'm still a huge fan. Even though those Ford Mustang dark horses are really struggling this year, I'm hoping that Ford can figure it out because they haven't even won a race yet this year, and Chris Buescher just got ripped the hell off this past week. So, guys, if you don't like NASCAR, that's the end of the NASCAR segment this week. We'll get back into movies right now. I appreciate you guys hanging around to listen to that, and I appreciate the question because I love talking NASCAR. This is a movie channel. I always kicked around the idea of starting like a sports-related channel, but unfortunately, I don't have the time or the money. I would love to one day. Maybe when I'm a full-time YouTuber, we'll do that, and I can talk NASCAR with guys like Eric Estep and like that, who I think has a great YouTube channel if you're a fan of NASCAR, and there's plenty more like the Iceberg as well. And this one is from Kevin Kruger, and he wrote, how would you rank the best picture winners of the 1990s? Well, made a list, as I like to do, and the 1990s had some great Best Picture winners, while also having some of the biggest rip-offs in movie history, because at number 10, I got Shakespeare in Love. This was 1998, and this is the one that should have gone to Saving Private Ryan, directed by Steven Spielberg. How many people talk about Shakespeare in Love nowadays? Nobody, because it's an okay movie. It's not a great movie. It's not a movie I personally love. I never met somebody who said that, no, Shakespeare in Love is the better movie over Saving Private Ryan. Saving Private Ryan, the opening scene to that movie alone, storming Normandy Beach, like that is one of the most iconic scenes in film history, and the way they shot that scene, and then the rest of the film is a great movie. So I don't know what they were thinking with this one. And then at number 9, American Beauty. I just don't really like this movie. Like, it's okay, but 1999 is one of the greatest years in film. This is the year that The Matrix came out. This is the year that Fight Club came out. But what movie won Best Picture that year? American Beauty. And given Sam Mendes would go on to direct some really good films, including Skyfall, and I think 1917 is a really good movie as well, but American Beauty just wasn't in at the time, and Kevin Spacey, I'm pretty sure, won Best Actor that year, and his performance is good. Not even talking about his personal life, his performance in that movie is good, but it's not that great of a movie. And at number 8, speaking of movies that are just kind of forgettable, and unfortunately, it's The English Patient, and it's a good movie, and Ralph Fiennes is great in the movie, as he's always great. He's been one of our underappreciated actors for a very long time. He's in another Best Picture winner from the 1990s that's coming up, and a better film in my opinion. The English Patient is just one that you could watch, and you're like, all right, it was pretty good. And, unfortunately, pretty good shouldn't win you an Academy Award, even though it's happened a lot in Academy Award history. And speaking of which, another one that is a travesty, and probably one of the biggest travesties of all time in Oscar history, at number 7, even though I don't hate this movie, it's Dances with Wolves. This was directed by Kevin Costner, a Western by Kevin Costner. It's basically very similar to movies like Avatar and Pocahontas. Very similar type movie here. It's shot pretty well. There's some good performances in it, but it shouldn't have won Best Picture because that's the year that Goodfellas came out. Goodfellas is one of the greatest movies of all time. And it's one of my favorite films of all time. Many people have said it's one of Martin Scorsese's greatest films of all time. For some reason, the Academy Award just has not awarded Martin Scorsese enough. He's one of the greatest directors ever. He has consistently delivered hit movies since the 1970s. He's still going. He just had a movie come out last year with Killers of the Flower Moon. But you know what? The Academy said, nah, screw it. Kevin Costner, come up here. Take your award for Dances with Wolves. And then at number 6, now, I really like Forrest Gump. The only thing with Forrest Gump is it probably shouldn't have won Best Picture in 1994. That should have gone to Pulp Fiction. Now, Forrest Gump itself, it's still a really good movie. I actually personally really enjoy that film. I think the 4K Blu-ray needs a little bit of work, and I'm hoping that, fingers crossed that new 4K Steelbook that's coming out has some upgrades to it. I'm probably not going to buy it if it doesn't, but maybe I'll review the 4K Blu-ray here on the channel because Forrest Gump, really good movie. Robert Zemeckis did a great job with it. Just don't think it should have won Best Picture. And at number 5, even though I like this movie, and that's Titanic from 1997, another movie that I don't think personally should have won Best Picture. I think that should have gone to LA Confidential. Titanic, directed by James Cameron. You know what? It's not a movie that's undeserving of Best Picture, so it's a little bit different. It's not like a travesty. I just personally prefer LA Confidential over Titanic, but what James Cameron did with this movie is unbelievable, recreating the Titanic. And this is where CGI looks perfect. We're living in a world now where CGI somehow looks worse than it did back in the 1990s, but it's used for this movie while combining it with everything working together, rebuilding the actual Titanic ship just to sink it. All that works just so well. The My Heart Will Go On, the entire I absolutely love the score for this movie. It's a fantastic movie. It's just that I still prefer LA Confidential slightly overall over it. And at number 4, Schindler's List, directed by Steven Spielberg. Maybe this is why they didn't give him the award for Saving Private Ryan, just because they gave it to him already for 1993 Schindler's List. And I mean, it's Steven Spielberg. He's one of the most acclaimed directors of all time, whether it be through awards or at the box office. In 1993, he didn't just release Schindler's List. No, he decided to release another little-known movie called Jurassic Park. And I personally, of course, prefer Jurassic Park because it's a little bit lighter. Schindler's List is a tough watch, but it is one of the best crafted, best movies that you'll ever see. It's just a tough movie to watch, but it's something that everybody should see just to see what human beings can do to each other. In a world we live in now where hate seems to be on the rise again, look at what happened. We don't want to have something like this ever happen again. This movie's filled with great performances from Liam Neeson, from Ralph Fiennes. Again, just a great movie, great score, beautiful black and white, the very limited use of color with the red. Can't say anything bad about Schindler's List. At number 3, Freedom! Braveheart. I love this movie. Mel Gibson directed it and starred in it, and it is one of the best movies of the 1990s. It is fantastic. Review the 4K one day here on the channel. It's a very good 4K Blu-ray, but it's just such, again, great score, great acting, great sets, production. I love Braveheart. So many people love Braveheart. The problem with Scotland is it's full of Scots. There's so many great lines in Braveheart. At number 2, one of my favorite movies ever, The Silence of the Lambs. And this movie, I'm pretty sure, is the last movie to sweep the Academy Awards. And well-deserved. I mean, everyone was winning awards for it, and they all deserved it. Anthony Hopkins, Hannibal Lecter, is one of the most iconic characters in film history. Jonathan Demme directed the hell out of this. Jodie Foster does a great job in this movie. There's not too much more I could already add. This movie is a classic, and that means at number 1, 1992, Unforgiven. I'm a big Western fan, and this is my favorite Western of all time. Directing and starring Clint Eastwood. William Money is one of my favorite film characters of all time. We don't get to see him in his prime. We get to see him at the tail end of his life. An old man trying to raise his kids, paying for all the wicked that he done when he was a drunk back in the day. And, he killed women and children. He was a horrible person. Now we're going to see Gene Hackman pushing him until finally he ends up snapping. And the end of this movie is one of my favorite endings in film history. I absolutely love Unforgiven. It was my first 4K Blu-ray, and it's really a 4K Blu-ray that kind of got me hooked on the medium. It's not the one that really got its hooks into me. It was still the first 4K Blu-ray I ever owned, and that's just because I absolutely love the film. That was a great question, Kevin. Thank you so much, buddy. And now on to our last question of the week. And this one is from Mr. Smelly Potato. It's actually 2 questions, and he wrote, do you think they will release TMNT 1990 4K next year for its 35th anniversary? And if so, how do you think we would get a box set with Turtles 1, 2, 3, and TMNT? Well, that's the last box set we actually got, was that 1, 2, and 3 and the animated TMNT. Now we've we've gotten 2 more movies, though, the Michael Bay produced ones, and then the one from last year, which is really good. So maybe what we'll get is probably just the original 3. I don't know if they'll even include TMNT in it, but I do think we'll eventually get it. Those movies are too beloved to not come to 4K Blu-ray. Its last Blu-ray release, when it was in the pizza box, was a great release, and it deserves an upgrade to 4K Blu-ray. And you know what? If we don't get it next year for its 35th anniversary, I don't know when we'll get it. I really do think it definitely deserves it. Those movies are so beloved. I personally still love the first one. 2 and 3, they don't work as well for me, but, Matt, who used to be on the channel, he's a huge fan of those movies, and, I would love them to come to 4K Blu-ray, so I'm hoping that we get them next year. If we don't get them next year, we might be in trouble. And then his other question is, what are your top 10 video games? Mine are Super Mario Bros. 3, great game. Legend of Zelda, NES, great game. So you're a big NES guy, I could tell already. Super Metroid, Final Fantasy VII, Metal Gear Solid, that's a PS1 game, love that game as well. TMNT, Turtles in Time, great game. Castlevania Symphony of the Night, that's a good one. I have a Splinter Cell on my list. Splinter Cell Chaos Theory, that's a great one. Prince of Persia, Sands of Time, and Elden Ring. Oh, you were an Elden Ring fan? I haven't played it yet. That game I heard, it looked like it'd be frustrating for me. I want to play that, but, I just don't got the time, and I feel like the controller will go out that window that I'm looking at right now. But anyway, I'll start from the bottom, and this was actually an Xbox 3. You're going to see a lot of Xbox 360 games, because that was really my heyday of video games. Really, PlayStation 2, and Xbox 360. Those were my big 3 consoles that I played the hell out of. I mean, the Xbox also, and the Nintendo 64, but those 3 consoles, those were the big ones that I played the most on when I was growing up. And the Xbox 360, that for me was a huge moment in my life, and I had the most time in the world to play video games at the time, and I played video games like crazy. So Condemned, a launch title for the Xbox 360. It's a funny story. We went to this place called Video City to rent a video game. We rented a game called The Outfit. We hated it so much we went and returned it, and we just rented the game Condemned because at the time there weren't too many Xbox 360 games. It's a great survival horror game, one of the best ever in my opinion. It actually got a sequel, then the franchise just kind of died. At number 9, Forza Horizon 5. I love the Forza Horizon series. It combines like real simulation stuff with arcade stuff. Like I got addicted to wheel spins or super wheel spins with this video game. I still go on and do my super wheel spins. It's like gambling, but you get money in the game, or you can get some classic cars. I'm not a big car guy. This is really the closest I ever get to cars. Like I just drive a regular Nissan Altima. Cars cost too much, but in this game I could drive a Ferrari, could drive a Lamborghini, and I sure as hell have a lot of fun driving a rally car on those sandy beaches. So that's why that's number 9. Number 8 is a game that surprised the hell out of a lot of us when it came out, and that is Batman Arkham Asylum. Talk a little bit about Matt again. Matt was working at a place called Game Crazy, which was attached to Hollywood Video back in the day. Hollywood Video and Game Crazy had set up in there the demo for Batman Arkham Asylum. And every Batman game was forgettable or no one cared about at that point. So we just thought that, no one heard of Rocksteady. Everyone just thought this game was going to suck. Turns out we were all wrong, and Batman Arkham Asylum is one of the greatest games ever. That got so many sequels. Rocksteady just had a game come out this year, which, you guys could look into that one and how that was received. But at the time, Arkham Asylum was like a breath of fresh air, and I loved it. Just collecting Riddler trophies, and the story itself, I liked that this map was more contained, whereas when we got to Arkham City, still love Arkham City, but I did miss the more smaller version of it in Arkham Asylum. That's why I will actually replay Arkham Asylum more than any other game in that entire franchise. Speaking of survival horror, at number 7, I got Resident Evil 2 Remake. This came out a few years ago. We've gotten Resident Evil 3 Remake, Resident Evil 4 Remake to this point, but I still think 2 was the best, using that RE engine, which doesn't actually stand for Resident Evil engine, if you could believe that one. But anyway, that game is great. The graphics are unbelievable, and it scares the hell out of you. They made every right decision with that game. I have no complaints about the RE2 Remake. It's one of my favorite games ever. At number 6, another 2006 Xbox 360 game, Gears of War. This felt like next gen. This felt like high definition. This is when people finally were starting to get HD TVs in their house. It wasn't 1080p yet. I think people were still playing in 720p, but man, we were living in the big time in 2006, and Gears of War really showed off the power of the Xbox 360, and the game is still a great game. And like I was saying, I have a Splinter Cell on my list, and it's the 2006 Splinter Cell Double Agent. Like I said, 2006, if I was going to rank the years in my life, 2006 is actually my favorite year of ever being on this planet. So many great memories from that year, and that includes Splinter Cell Double Agent. Now, I love the original trilogy that came out on the Xbox. Don't get me wrong, Pandora of Time, Chaos Theory. Love those games. But Double Agent, which also has an Xbox release, which is also different from the Xbox 360 release, so you can look that up too. There's some little differences. I like them both. Still prefer the 360 version. And this one, you're playing a Double Agent, and I remember just, oh, you can see the sweat coming down Sam Fisher's head. You know, Michael Ironside. There's a physical media channel. You guys know who Michael Ironside is. He is the star of such great movies like Scanners, and he's in Starship Troopers. And he does the voice of Sam Fisher. And a lot of people always want him to be the voice of Sam Fisher. The follow-up to this game is also really good, but Double Agent holds a special place in my heart. Number 4, 2006's Elder Scrolls Oblivion. Now, I didn't play Morrowind, and believe it or not, I still haven't played completely Skyrim, but Oblivion back in 2006, that summer, I remember, I think it said I put in 100 and something hours into that game, which is probably the only game I ever did that with. That's because that was the first RPG that really sunk its claws into me, and I just loved every minute of that summer. I remember playing Oblivion and then watching this Undertaker DVD and eating mint chocolate chip ice cream. So it was a good summer for me. Number 3, I think this is the best Grand Theft Auto game, Grand Theft Auto Vice City. This had a remake a couple years ago along with 3 and San Andreas. You know, it came out of the gate a little bit slow, but you still get those nostalgic feelings listening to the radio station. You guys know how much I love the 80s. I love everything about the 80s. And I think a lot of that can be credited to the fact that I was playing Grand Theft Auto Vice City when it came out on October 29, 2002. I remember that very well because it was my dad's birthday, but all I could look forward to was playing Grand Theft Auto Vice City, listening to all those 80s songs. Man, what a great game, and that's why it's my number 3. And at number 2, and this one, you know, it's surprising how high it is now, but that's Red Dead Redemption 2. Funny story, at my old job, actually the guys all chipped in because I was feeling a little down at the time. You know, that job really sucked the life out of you. That's actually the big reason why I left that job. But, you know, we would be working 16-hour days, and I never had time to play video games, and I'd be complaining about that, and people felt bad because I didn't live near the job or anything, so it was a long drive back and forth for me. And they actually all chipped in and bought me this game for the Xbox One. And I didn't really get to fully play the game until 2020 when the pandemic rolled around, and Red Dead Redemption 2 is a fantastic game. Let me tell you, just all the things you can do in this game, and if you're a fan of Westerns, I mean, you're just going to be living in heaven playing Red Dead Redemption 2. Just doing little things, just going to the saloon, the shootouts, you know, growing your hair and beard out long, the clothes. I just love the game, and, you know, it would be number 1 if it wasn't for the nostalgic feelings attached to 2001's Halo. The Halo franchise is probably my favorite franchise of all time, but really it's Halo 1, 2, and 3, and then I forget what the one that came out after it was, but that was the last one that was done by Bungie. Pretty much a huge chunk of my childhood was dedicated to Halo. That all started with the original one. This moved Xboxes. Without this, I wouldn't have all the other Xbox 360 games on this list because Halo was the flagship franchise for Microsoft. And we started this video talking about Microsoft and all their layoffs. You know, they still got it right with the original Xbox, and they got it right with Halo and Bungie and everything that they did. Master Chief is somebody you could absolutely recognize in a crowd, and he deserves it. And this game didn't even have online play. You just had to play split screen with your buddies and your cousins and your friends and whatever you wanted to do. You didn't have online. That didn't come along till Halo 2. Actually, Xbox Live hadn't even launched when this game came out, but it still had some of the greatest maps of all time. It's just that good. If you haven't played Halo, play Halo, guys. But anyway, that's going to do it for this week on another episode of Let's Talk Physical Media. I hope you guys enjoyed this week's show. I had a lot of fun making it. I love doing top 10 lists. I want to thank everybody who sent in questions this week. I really do appreciate it. If I didn't get to your question, I am really sorry. We'll get to that question next week, and we actually have a pretty big guest planned for the end of this month, so keep a lookout for that. And if you guys like this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and tell your friends about us. Maybe become a channel member like our producers John Doe Juggalo, Jason Martin, and Mr. Smelly Potato, or you can become a channel director like Frank from Frank's Media and Reviews. Any which way you guys want to go, if you got no money to throw away, we just hope you liked this video, and if you did, make sure you tell your friends about us, and then we'll be seeing you around.